Welcome to episode number 13 of Bedtime Routines and Rituals with Dads. So this week we're talking to two hands-on, all-in dads about bedtime. And I think that's a really interesting topic for a podcast called The Language of Ahava, because to me, bedtime is that space of love, of connection, and of building those values that you are planting the seeds for with your children. Maybe it's sweet and peaceful. Maybe it's wild and crazy. You guys can tell me how that's going for you. So our two dads today are Howard Davis, who his wife says carries 98% of bedtime with 3 kids and one on the way. Howard's saying 99%. And we also have Dustin Kebre, who's a dad of 2 boys, also a psychotherapist. So he can wear 2 hats today. But I invited Dustin back because way back when we did a couples podcast, and mom kind of threw dad under the bus for messing up the bedtime routines. So I want to sort of get that perspective of consistency, continuity, and disruption that dads might bring. But I'm here with my awesome co-host, Rabbi David Steinhardt. Rabbi, how are you this week? And
Well, Karen, how are you?
I'm good.
Yeah, good.
Dad's in bedtime. What do you think about?
Well, what immediately I think about my own experience, having raised 3 children and being very involved in those in that ritual at bedtime, and I have really positive feelings about it. But I'm also thinking about it a little bit in terms of the meaning of ritual and the meaning of transition. So as we get into the conversation, we'll talk a little bit more about it. But I have
Uh,
very, very, very clear, vivid memories of putting my kids to bed.
Go ahead, share us a little piece of it, Rabbi.
Well, one of the things that I used to do is I used to make up stories. So, obviously you would begin with reading stories, but then I used to make up stories, and typically they were travelogues. And the kids absolutely loved them, and they asked for them. And my kids are, they range from 41 to 32 years old, and they remember some of them to this day. And it was just a way of talking about places and learning about places and a little bit about languages, and that was good. I obviously, I would always end with prayer. And I think prayer at times of transition, and particularly nighttime and bedtime, can be scary for kids. So hopefully they associated some words of prayer with comfort, and they've held on to that. I know they do it with their own kids, to this day. So that's obviously a good sign. But I want to hear from these other guys.
And me too. But I want to touch back on all of those because I think all of them. Okay, so Howard, tell us how you manage 3 bedtimes, and does it feel calm and peaceful the way Rabbi remembers it, or is there a different lived experience for you at the moment?
Okay. Hey guys, I hope you can hear me okay. Um, so yeah, I'll first start by saying it wasn't always me at 99%. As more kids came, the routine has changed. But when we had 2 kids, that's when we really noticed, and that's when the change happened. Was we noticed that I would go in with my daughter or son, it didn't matter which one, and Julie would go in with the other, and I would be out in an efficient time frame, and she would be out in over an hour, maybe even more. And it just became so time consuming on her end that it was just like the efficiency is not there, and we need to make a change. So that's when we started changing to me. It really didn't get to like be all the kids until the 3rd. So when Quinn came, I just basically said, now that it's 3, we don't have the time for the, she's the inefficiency, and that's what and she knew it. So she said, let's, that's going to be something I'll do and figure it out. So now that it's 3, I would say, it's a work in progress always, but I have it pretty mapped out time wise during the week, which there are bedtimes and school wake ups. My son, who is the middle child, actually goes to sleep first because he needs more sleep. He is our crazy energy child. So he goes to bed at 7:45. He is asleep. We're in bed. I'm out of there by 7:45, 7:50 at the latest. My middle daughter, we start her bedtime routine by 8:10, 8:15, and she is down by 8:25. And then my oldest daughter is now old enough to do it on her own. So she just likes me to come up and give her a kiss and lay for a few minutes. So 8:55 down by 9. So it's definitely in a good order. And then we flop it on the weekends. My youngest will go down at 8. My son will go down at 8:30, and then my daughter will go down at 9. The routines are very calm, very, very fluid. All my children are creatures of habit, and it's always this very, very, very much the same. I sing to my youngest daughter, and we hold hands and talk for a little bit. My son and I just talk, and then my oldest daughter and I kind of go over what was her day and make sure that we just have a quick chat. Prayer, I would love to include prayer. I do not. I do make sure that I tell each kid that I love them. I make sure I say that every day to all of my children for the rest of my life. I'll make sure I do that at least once a day to all my children forever. I think it's very easy with text and electronic, capabilities these days to be able to do that. So I make sure that I say I love you. And then each kid, we have our special routine right at the end. My daughter will say, I love you. I'll say, I love you. Good night. Good night. And then my son, I love you. I love you. And then my daughter, the same. I love you. Good night. And that's it. Very smooth, very, very, very quick, easy. Now it's efficient. So it's second nature, very easy. I look forward to doing it with 4.
I love it. I love it. And I'm just curious about the word efficiency. Like I like that you're in and out, but I don't want that to minimize the value of that connection, of that song, of that hand holding. And maybe that it's a special place in your heart, or is this at the end of the day, you're just spent?
I love my bedtime. I enjoy it. I'm very happy I do it. No problems at all. Efficiency, I use the word just because the time length, right? It's, I'm sure I get the same out of the 15 minutes that Julie got out of an hour and 15 minutes. So it really does come down to efficiency and, start and letting the kid know that there's got to be some sort of routine and it can't just be me sitting here forever. But yeah, I cherish it. I mean, if you talk to my parents about things I do with the kids and me being with the kids is nonstop just because of my flexible schedule. Bedtime's probably, up there at the number top.
Yeah. And I think there is something to be said for the short. It goes to Rabbi's transition. Bedtime is, children don't know that tomorrow's coming for them, that tomorrow's coming with joy and with opportunities and adventure. And so when we can seal it up sweetly, and when we get to the rituals, my favorite line from Twinkle Twinkle Kahavim is, when you say Shema at night, everything will be all right. And no matter what your routine is, I think that's the message we tuck them in with, is that you are safe. I've got your back. You can always count on me and you belong here. I just think that the messages that they hear through these simple and maybe even efficient routines are profound and powerful. And we feel them too. So maybe. Rabbi, anything to add before we pass it to Dustin?
No, I'd like to hear from Dustin, something to add.
Okay, Dustin. So your old routines when you used to come home and be the disruptor.
See, I don't know if I would use that word. First of all, I want to say thank you, Karen, for having me back right away. Like fond memories of your other podcast that we used to do. We had a really good time, and also nice to meet you, Rabbi, and Howard as well. I love the topic, rituals and transition. It's just funny hearing from Howard. I actually think that Howard would align with Tara, my wife, perfectly, right? Because I think she would be on the efficient side, and I would be on the, it could go on forever. I think traditionally, back when my kids were younger, they're 7.5 and 4.5, and I think my transition has, gone more to the more efficient side than the ritual side. And I was, just briefly telling Karen before this that, you get home, I get home from work, I have my own private practice, but I get home from work sometimes at 9 o'clock, and there's a balance. And my son sometimes wants to stay up. He goes to bed at 7, but wants to stay up, and he wants me to give him a kiss. And I go in there, give him a kiss. I say, all right, I'm gonna go eat dinner now, and go downstairs. He says, "Wait a minute, Dad, you got to go lay with me, and you got to watch a little video, sing a song, and all that stuff." And I sort of always hold myself accountable, because that's where I think that when they are teenagers, when they're older, they aren't going to want to lay with me anymore. And these is a special time that I have that I'll never have back. And they want me like I'm like a superhero, like I'm a celebrity of some sort. And I just stop myself and I say, okay, let me give that to them. Um, just I happen to say the Shema every single night before I go to bed. It's just something that was done for me. My mom did to me, and I do with my children. And we say Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Amen. And then we do say like prayers for the next day, or goals that we want to accomplish. We won this little league baseball championship, and we prayed that we would play hard and we would be strong and be healthy, and and for people that we care about in our life. And I think that's a major element of the bedtime routine. And I love, Rabbi, that you make up stories. That I think my son loves me telling stories. I like to tell the story of the tortoise and the hare. He loves that story. Tells me to repeat it all the time, and we go over what the moral of the story is. And it's a very special time with my son. But as I transition, I have my younger son. It's different. We still do some of the same things, but I would say that I've Tara has taken on more of a role with our younger son in the bedtime routine, and he prefers her, even though he wants me to be involved as well. And again, it's just a special time that parents get to share with their children.
Can I ask you guys a question? I recall this as my kids were getting a little older, and I used to spend a lot of time doing this. I just felt the time was so very, very precious, particularly those days where you worked. And kids are vulnerable at that time, so they tend to be really open. As my kids got older and I would tell these stories, it wasn't too infrequent that I would find them waking me up. Like at the end of a long day, I'd be really tired. I'd be lying in the bed next to them, and they'd say, "Abba, get up, get up, get up, finish the story." So the bedtime routine often worked for me. I just had a very funny recollection, if I can share it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is that when I was a little kid, so I'm older than you guys. And when I was a little kid, one of the favorite children's television programs was Lassie. So that's before your time.
I remember Lassie.
I remember.
Yeah.
So when Timmy went to bed at night, he used to go down on his knees, and he would say a prayer on his knees. And so I remember as a little kid going to my bedroom and getting down on my knees. And I remember my mother walking in and saying to me, "David, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm praying like Timmy did." And she said, "No, that's what Christians do. Christians bow when they pray, but we don't. You can say the prayer when you lie down." And then I remember saying, "So what do I pray?" And so my parents used to sing Shema to me. And then she said, "Well, pray for people." And so that's what I did as a little kid. I would say prayers for all the people I knew, and just would say, "God, please keep them healthy." That was, and I think I do think it's the vulnerability of the onset of darkness that allows for those times to be pretty precious. When you talk about interrupters, that's the worst thing possible that a father who's away all day, the kids are all excited to do, and the mother wants to calm the kids down, to go to sleep. And the father who then comes home and throws the kid up and down and gets them all excited, you want them to be able to relax a little bit.
Well, my opinion, just to defend the disruptors, is I'm okay in co-parenting guidelines if one parent chooses to be the disruptor, and in some ways he feels, I'll make it a he in this case, he feels the need to have that connection and be present. Mom's allowed to say, "This is on you. and walk away. So parents can disagree and be inconsistent, but the one who is doing the breaking of the rules has to live with the consequences. So that dad doesn't get to dump it back on mom an hour later and go, they can't handle them, you come back. She can't come back and save him and be a fixer. So if somebody's going to be the disruptor, then they have to live through that whole pattern and process on their own. And then when they're exhausted from it, mom can come in, or vice versa, and say, you know what, if you want to shorten it, if you want it to be streamlined rather than efficient, because I don't want efficient bedtimes, there's just something about that, then streamline it. Here's what works for us. So you can, whoever sets that pattern just has to live with the consequences of it. And then because I just feel like if a dad's not coming home till 9 and the child, and they want to have that bond, I can't say no. So, but as Howard said, and I think that was something else that was really interesting is, and I think, and Dustin, you said it too, each of your children have different bedtime styles. Some open up and need, big expressions and interactions, and others are like, tuck me in, say good night, and I just want to fall off on my own. And so each child needs exactly what they need in that routine too. So, but to the, well, let me go back to Howard and mom as the disruptor. Let's throw, we can throw her under the bus. We can just represent. How do the children perceive each of your styles and what they get from those?
I mean, there's not a disruption, I don't think, at all, just because none of us, well, when Julie's doing a show or working, maybe, but traditionally we're both here. We're both spending plenty of time with the kids, so there's no lack of time with either parent from any of the children, for sure. So I would say that they want to be put to bed by Julie because they never get to go to be put to bed by Julie. So I just visited my grandma for 4 nights in Montreal, and she puts them to bed every night. So they got that, but they definitely want her because they don't have her. As far as likes, no. When she puts Quinn down, Quinn usually still asks for me to come do my routine. She prefers me for sure. My older daughter prefers me for sure. That's for, Brady's my sensitive guy and definitely wants mommy. But he's good with our routine. We've gotten it down to where we're both like it and are comfortable and talk and go over the things that we want. I gotta say, I really like the stories and that kind of idea. So I might try to incorporate of the stories from when I was a child. I tend to forget all the time, and I think we probably all do this, is the stuff that from when we were kids, right? Like I think about all the time. I mean, cartoons are probably not as good because they were so violent, but there was so much good stuff from when we were kids that our kids should see and know, that I would love to start doing that. I mean, it could start with music. I mean, I force my kids to listen to the Beatles because they should listen to the Beatles and they should hear the Beatles. So I do that. I was thinking the other day about Forrest Gump, and I'm like, man, Forrest Gump was like the craziest, amazing movie ever. But my kids wouldn't know anything in it. They wouldn't know who Lennon is. They don't know anything about Vietnam. They may have heard of Elvis, but like, I'm thinking about the whole movie and all the good stuff, and I'm like, they don't know it. So I'm, maybe this will be a good kickstart for me to get some of the good stuff from when I was a kid back to my kids.
Yeah. So both from a child point of view, but then I'm hearing like from a parent point of view, is there enough time in the day to do and give all that, I mean, I know we only have so much to give, but it's like, like, how do you find that time to share the traditions, the rituals, the stories yourself? And I think that's where, when Julie's doing a a play and Dustin's working and your schedules are pulling you out, you come back late at night and go like, yeah, but I've got to still catch up on the 2 hours that I missed this evening. And that's a struggle.
Absolutely.
I
Because
think
it had,
number of kids is definitely a part of it. I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, right? Like it's good, it's bad, it's both. I mean, if I had one kid, I wouldn't mind. I don't think I'd mind spending an hour, but you can't spend an hour with four. You just can't. There's not 4 hours. Nobody has that. So, I think now getting it down to a routine with more kids is definitely something that matters, just because, like you said, the time will run away. And
Right.
and look, if I spend an hour with my first kid, my second kid's going to bed late. So
Right.
It's a managed thing. You asked me, Karen, also about COVID and how and what have you been doing? I answered you for you. The kids have been back to their normal routines. Nolan's had baseball, then he has tutors, and then they have basketball. I mean, you're getting soccer. You're getting home 7:30, 8 o'clock. They have reading they have to do every single night for 20 minutes. Sometimes they have a test the next day. You got to review the test as well. Then do you have time for the transition routine after that? They got to eat dinner, and it's a whole thing. We used to have a very strict bedtime of 7 o'clock,
Right.
but we have learned that the kids can still function if they go to bed a little bit later. If it's a little bit off the wall, I'll do like you read one page, I read another page, they read. Well, you make it work and you do the best you can. You can still connect. I agree with Howard that with 4 kids, it's definitely different than 2 kids. You have more time that you can spend. You can divide and conquer with 2 kids. Tara could be in bed with one. I could be in bed with the other. When you're alone, I'm like jumping back. I'm like, hey, I'll be back in 2 minutes. All right, where are you going? I'll be back in 2 minutes. And then you keep doing that in routine. It's funny also that Nolan, my older one, he gets nostalgic about things we did when he was 3. For example, one night we're laying in bed and I'm like Googling videos and I Googled the Duck Song. I don't know if you ever Googled the Duck Song. There's like Duck Song 1, 2, and 3. It's like this silly little song. It's like bum, 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 bum. A duck walked into a, lemonade stand, whatever. And he was saying the other day, can you play me the Duck Song? I hadn't played the Duck Song for a couple years, and watching that with him or listening to it is so special for him. And he said to me recently, he said, I really want to grow up, but I sometimes miss being a baby, because he misses that all those sweet things that we did. And I'm happy he has those memories, and I'm sad too that we don't spend as much time. It gets less and less and less.
That's what you're pointing to is part of the power of ritual, though, obviously. So ritual roots us into, when we do things over and over again, it gives us some comfort because it brings us back to the beginning. So you do this bedtime ritual and your son is remembering what you sang to him when he was 3, and he's getting a lot of comfort out of doing that, and wants to hear it again. And so it roots him in an earlier time in his life, and it also connects him very deeply to you singing that song, and it's really quite nice.
Yeah, and music could do that as well.
Yeah.
Catch the Cradle is another really special song that we share, and I'm sure you have songs with your children that you share, Rabbi, as well.
Because with the pace of our days and of our weeks and of our years, if you don't have that quiet at the end of the day or that pause at Shabbat, it's like the memories can't percolate up. I mean, when he remembers that song, it's like there's an opening when you're just sitting together. And I do think, even as they get older, and I intentionally wanted dads of older kids on this podcast, because I think that the smallness of the under 2 group is just like, oh, the moms and dads manage that to their perfection, but now your kids steer this, and you realize, they're going to ask you for what they need, tell you what they're thinking, what they remember, and define all this in a new way that isn't true when they're little. But
Can I
Rabbi,
add a little, like, a religious dimension in this,
I
or
would
two?
like that. Yes. Please.
On Friday night, there's a prayer that we say. It's Vishamru, and the congregation stands and sings it with joy. The last two words of that prayer are Shavat Vayinafash, and it's referring to God. Shavat obviously is like Shabbat, but there it means and he ceased or he stopped. And then the word Vayinafash, it's a verb, but the root of the verb is nefesh, which means soul. And so he stopped and then he did soul. And so I think that, again, those transition moments do allow us to get in touch with something deeper, something beyond the physical, something beyond the material. And so just like that prayer says about Shabbat, it's also true putting our kids to bed. When we do it, they know we love them. And there's something there's something so more in that, so much in that expression. So, Howard, I really appreciate the fact that you tell your kids you love them every day and you'll continue to forever. And, and I feel like as a 68-year-old father of adult kids, I tell them I love them almost every day also. And it roots us into something very powerful and gives us comfort. Yeah.
So Rabbi, I do believe that this is soul time. And the reason that I wanted bedtime on this podcast is because I think it does define us as family. It defines the values, and there's an intersection between a Jewish family and bedtime routines, whether, regardless of how you say those prayers, because it is your identity. And so Rabbi, if you'll just wrap us up in options or possibilities for the prayer, for a Jewish soul connection for this moment in time for young families.
Right, there's a lot of pressure on me for this one. First of all, I think there are books of children's prayers, which are really nice. And the last prayer that a Jew recites, and the last prayer a Jew recites every day is Shema Yisrael. That's what Dustin was saying that he heard growing up. And that's the prayer that I would sing to my kids also, Shema Yisrael. And that connects them. I don't know if they knew what the words meant or not, but it connected them to the words, to the melody, to the language, to the tradition, and then the Ahava, and that means that you should love. And those were the prayers at the end. But any prayers could do. I also, I'll tell you two songs I used to sing pretty regularly. One was This Little Light of Mine, which is not a Jewish song, but there's something about it that it lights up something spiritual. And I used to sing Kumbaya also, which was before I went to Jewish summer camps. I went to YMCA camps, and that's where I got a hold of those songs, and they're comforting.
So Howard, we might just have to send you off with the Beatles anthology for your new bedtime songs.
By the way, have you seen the documentary on Disney Plus, the video stuff?
Yeah.
Watching it.
After when we close this, I want to talk about that.
Thank you all so very, very much. We appreciate who you are as dads. We appreciate who you are as men in this community and your families. And Rabbi, I just love bringing it all together for families. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.